Hello, everyone. It's just gone 10 o'clock, and you're all very welcome here this morning to our Maynooth University talk with an amazing inspirational speaker. My name is Ita McGuigan, and I work in the admissions office in Maynooth University, and I look after anything to do with STEM at the university. We've been running a series of talks over the last number of weeks, and we're very excited about them all, but in particular about one from our alumni. So before I start, I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to log on. I'm going to call out a few schools, but just to let you know that this is being recorded, but no one's face is going to be shown unless they're from Maynooth University and involved in organising this. And I will send the link and the recording to anyone who is registered, and you're more than welcome to share with your other classes in your school or other colleagues that you may think this will be of benefit to. We've over 2,000 people logging on from schools all around Ireland, and we're delighted to have you from TY 5th and 6th year. And also we actually have undergraduate students who are studying STEM in Maynooth University, and also PhD students, and a special welcome also to staff from the university also who may know and may have taught our guest speaker today. So I'm just going to run through a few schools. Huge welcome to Haywood Community School in Laois. We have our ladies Green Hills and Drogheda, and welcome again. You're great attendees at all our science talks. We have St Brendan's in Borough, Cross and Passion in County Kildare, Cashel Community School, Maynooth Community College, Tralee CBS, Rathdown, Tullamore College, Blessington Community College, Presentation Secondary School, Castle Island, Mary College from Condra, St Mary's again in Ennis, Oaklands College, Assumption Secondary School, the Institute of Education, Skibbereen Community College. We have St Joseph's in Rush, Pobbleskull, Corca Dovna, St Joseph's, St Mark's in Tala, St Kevin's in Clondalkin. A big shout out to Pobbleskull Nyasan. These were flat out tweeting this morning, and indeed any schools feel free to tag us on at Maynooth CEO. We have Pobbleskull Isidel in Palmerstown, Colostarreach, St Mary's, Portlaoise, and we've schools from Kerry. We've a couple of schools there, Comprehensive School in Kerry, Holy Faith, and we also have St Aidan's in Cork, and we have lots more schools. Sorry, I haven't got through them all. Maybe before the end of the talk, I will get through them all. So before we hand over to our guest speaker, I'm delighted to welcome one of our staff and friend, Dr. Kieran Mockinvard from Maynooth University. I asked, we logged on a couple of minutes early with Kieran and Darragh, and I said to Kieran, how will I introduce you, Kieran? And Kieran was like, Jeannie, Darragh, I don't know, how will he introduce me? And I have it written down here. So he was my second tutor as I was so much in trouble in first year, and he's also a friend. So, and I'd just like to thank Kieran, who actually is a friend of Darragh's and helped organise this talk. And Kieran, I'm going to hand over to you. Oh, and just before I do, Kieran, sorry, I'm going to encourage all students and all schools to ask questions in the Q&A, and Darragh has kindly agreed to answer any questions throughout the presentation or indeed at the end. So I think that's all from my end. I'm going to turn off my camera, Kieran, and hand over to you.
Thank you, Ita. Is anyone from Our Lady Secondary School in Castleblaney here today?
No, not today, but we're going to send them the link.
Because they knew that was my old secondary school, so they knew I was going to be on, so they didn't want me to embarrass them. Thank you very much. And you're all very welcome to this talk. I will not say very much. I've known Darragh for over 20 years now, and I think I'm really looking forward to this talk. We're good friends. There's a bunch of about 10 people, in or around 10, that we still kind of communicate online. Great days in Maynooth University, and I think we were trying to figure out what I should say here, and we should keep it short. When I came to Maynooth as well, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. When I was in school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I spent most of my time playing football and reading books and maybe not being the best student I should have been. And look at me now. But I think I think that this will come across from Darragh's talk, but I think it's very important that if possible, if you've got the opportunity, to try and do something that you're interested in. I was always interested in maths and always interested in Irish, even though I was never particularly good at it. And when I came to Maynooth, I chose those subjects, and the number of opportunities that arose that I didn't even know about during my degree, things I didn't even know existed. And it was a great opportunity to do a general degree, and slowly but surely, with many bumps in the road, find my way into my career now. So that's enough about me. Without any further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce my dear friend Darragh. Best of luck, Darragh. I'll be here if people have questions. They probably don't need to talk to me, but I'll be here if need be. All the best.
All right, cheers. Thanks, Kieran. So as Ita said, if people have questions, pop them into the chat or to Ita, and I'm happy to, if they're relevant to what I'm talking about at that moment, I'll stop. This is going to be a very informal talk because I normally give presentations to scientific conferences, which are very different, but this is much more of a chat. I wanted to talk to you a bit about how my life has gone since just before I went to university and how that led to where I am now, because a lot of people look from the outside and they think it's really smooth, plain sailing, and it really isn't. So I just want to give you a bit of perspective on that, and hopefully for some people it'll make them feel a bit better in case they're feeling a bit lost or don't know what they want to do, because I was exactly the same. So I hope I hear there's people from my old school, Holy Family in Rathcoole. So hi everybody, and my good friend Miss Glennon from public school Nassau is here, and my dog is just going nuts because the doorbell is ringing. Classic. All right. Oh, sorry about that. The perils of Zoom. So what I thought I would do is I would talk to you a little bit about how my life has panned out. And sorry, the dog is driving me mad. And what I'll do is I'll share my screen now, and hopefully my dog will stop barking in a second. Anyway, so yeah, so most of you probably know me from the TV. A couple of people may know me otherwise, but my life was not always like this. I had a very ordinary life. I was a very ordinary undergrad, and my life was not exactly plain sailing all the way. So I've put this out as, it's a chase, not a marathon. So it's not a chase, it's a marathon. So it's never been a dash. I never was going straight toward this. This happened by accident, and I had a very long slog up to that point. Or my subtitle is "How did that Egypt get on the television?" Because I get that quite a bit from my friends at home when I first ended up on TV. So what I'm going to talk about today, just in case your internet fails or you lose attention span or you fall asleep or something, and this is a quick summary of how it's going to go. So I'm going to start out when I was about 17. So I was a very, very normal person. I wasn't in any way really exceptional, and I didn't really know where I was going to go. And I'm going to talk through how I ended up in college and my college years and what they were like, which was a wonderful experience, I have to say. And you can tell it was because I stayed there for so long. I ended up in university for about 10 years, more college years because I kept going. I did a PhD as well. And then I went to work in the real world for a while, and it didn't really suit me. So I went back to college. And then how I ended up on quizzes and TV. So that's the basic layout of what I'm going to talk about. But at the end, I'll leave plenty of time. If people want to send me questions, I'll answer loads of questions. I've got nothing else on this morning, so I have loads of time. So I'm going to occasionally put up these kind of screens with some big text, and these are the take-home messages for you to take. So this is the important thing is, and like I said, this is a marathon, not a chase. So there were lots and lots of bumps along the way. I had tons of times where I had no idea what was going to happen. I had tons of times where I was out of work or, no clear path to follow whatsoever. And the main thing to remember is that it's almost never as easy as it looks from the outside. When you see someone who's made it to a particular position, you go, oh, aren't they lucky? Isn't it great how this has all worked out for them? But it's only worked out after time. And quite a lot of the time, you get a false impression from the outside. And it can be a real struggle for a lot of people. And it was a real struggle for me. I didn't have it completely awful. I had to work hard, and there was a lot of things that went horribly wrong. So here's me when I was 17. I managed to find a picture of me. I think I might be 16 or just turning 17. This is at my brother's birthday party. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. Now, I'm sure quite a lot of you are around this age now, and people might be starting to ask you that, what do you want to do with your life? And when I was asked, I just went, I don't know. I had no idea. I hadn't got a clue. I had no real ambitions. I didn't have a job I wanted to do. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to college. I really didn't have a plan, you know, and I see people who are 17 who have a plan, and I'm slightly in awe of them, to be honest, but I didn't have a plan at all. So I wasn't really bothered about that. That was the other thing, because I was 17 and I was young and I was going, oh, I'm having fun. I'm going out with my friends and I'm having a laugh, and I had a part-time job and all that kind of stuff. I wasn't too bothered that I didn't have a plan, and I probably should have been. So, but really didn't bother me. And when it came to filling out the CAO form, and I'm pretty sure at least some of you will have this, though most of you, I hope, were a bit more prepared than me. I kind of filled it out randomly based on courses that sounded fun, even the place it was. You know, I did it pretty randomly, so I wasn't sure. I think I put down a mixture of things from arts. I did corporate law, history, and science near the top, because science was my best subject in school, but that was the only reason why it made it to the top. I wasn't really sure. And this is not the greatest idea. This is not how you should start your life. You really should try and put some time into this. And for reasons that you'll see, it wasn't such a good idea for me to do this. So when the offers came out, I got a place doing science, a science degree in Sligo. And the reason why I put down Sligo is because one of my best friends at the time, Rua, good friend of mine, was going to Sligo to do civil engineering because his girlfriend was from Sligo. So the fact that my friend's girlfriend was from Sligo is the reason why I went to Sligo, which is a terrible reason to do it. And it was a great course. I really like Sligo as a town. I've since taken up surfing, so I'd spent a lot of time there. It's a good place. It was cheap to live there, all that kind of stuff. The course was good. I really liked it. I found it really interesting. I was really getting into science. I went, actually, do you know what? This is so much more interesting than it is in school, because we were doing earth science and geology and all sorts of cool stuff, doing really cool experiments. But I only lasted a semester. So I had never lived away from home before, and I got really homesick, really, really homesick. And at one point, we were sitting in the cold because we'd spent all of our money, and we were like burning sticks off the trees in the garden in the fireplace to try and stay warm. And I was going, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. It was December, it was freezing cold. I wanted to go home to my mammy. I know, sad and everything, but it's true. Because I'm 17, I was only a kid. I think I just turned 18. So I only lasted a semester and then I dropped out. So then when I went home, I realized I needed a job because, you know, I had to do something. I couldn't just hang around. So my brother is a bricklayer, and he offered me a job laboring on a building site. And at the time, I think I was getting paid £25 a day, which seemed like a lot of money at the time, but compared to now, it's not. But that was how much it was. And I was hauling bricks and mortar and cement and digging and cleaning stuff up. And I was not happy with this at all. It was January, it was spilling with rain. I wasn't getting paid very much money. So I actually only lasted 2 weeks of that before I said, here, can't do this anymore. This is not for me. So I ended up getting work in my local petrol station. So this was the job I had done when I was 16. I was washing cars and stuff, and I got the night shifts. So that was fine. I got paid extra money, and I sat around mostly reading books, which I love doing. So I am a big nerd. So I sat reading books and sort of taking money off people who were getting petrol. But when I got held up by a guy with a syringe and I realized I was sleeping all day when everybody else was doing things, I realized this wasn't for me either. So all of a sudden, going to college didn't seem like that bad a decision. Now, this might seem like, you know, a stupid thing to tell you, but it's important because these 2 jobs made me realize that, you know what, I do want to go to college. I want to do science. I like doing it, and I'd like to do it for a job. I don't want to work in these kind of jobs. So that formative experience, that dropping out and figuring this out, changed me as a person. So it's not always a bad thing to have some bad experiences, because it can help you realize what's your real priority in life. So I wanted to go back to college. So rather than go through the thing I did in Sligo again, I commuted to college. So Maynooth is only about half an hour from Rathcoole, and a good friend of mine who I'd gone to school with was starting in Maynooth, and we both ended up doing science. So it was great. So he used to drive and I used to share with him, and it was great. I was a little bit older. I was a teeny tiny bit wiser because of what had happened. So I was back in college and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I had such a good time at Maynooth. I can't tell you how much of a good time I had because I stayed there for 9 years. Of course I had a good time. I didn't want to leave. But a lot of people ask me, you know, oh, it's okay for you. You're going to college. You're a genius. Oh, it's so easy. It was easy for me. It was absolutely not easy. And if you are going to go and you really want to make it go of university, it's not easy. You have to work hard at it. And in particular, this doesn't come across with people like me. So I have a social media presence in which I present a very airbrushed idea to the world of what my life is like and what my life has been like. But it's not like that, not in real life. And TV and social media in particular, they don't show you the whole truth. They don't give you the downsides. People are very quick to show, you know, their new thing or their cool holiday, but they're not very quick to show hard work and slogging away and all the horrible things, because nobody wants to see that. So the key thing to take out of here, and the people who know me know this, is I'm a fairly normal person. I just happen to be good at one thing, and that's quizzes. I'm terrible at almost everything. I'm no good at sports. I can't sing. I can't dance. I can't dance a step. I am not artistic. I'm just really good at quizzes and exams, which is great for when you're at university or you work on a quiz show. But other than that, I'm a fairly normal person. So Maynooth was great. It really was. Just going back to that, but I did have to work at it. So this is the first time in my life that I actually did really, really work hard academically. So because I'm good at quizzes and I'm good at exams, I kind of sailed through school and I didn't care and I didn't have a plan. So I didn't really do very much work, and I didn't do that well in my Leaving Cert. So, you know, this was the first time that I really, really, really had to work hard. So I had to work hard. I had to put in the hours. I went to every one of my lectures. I think in first year, I only missed one lecture, and that's because our car broke down and we were late. I worked really, really hard. I went to all my labs. I did all my assignments, but I liked it. I enjoyed it. It was hard work, but it was good because I was interested in it. And Kieran alluded to this. This is the key thing. If you're going to go to university, don't do the thing that you think you should do because, you know, you've got some weird idea of what will happen in your future. You have to do something you're interested in, because it's basically murder. It's horrible if you have to work really, really hard all of the time on something that you don't really like. Whereas I liked science, I was interested in it, and I had to work hard. So I had one big problem in first year, is that I really struggled with the maths course. So again, we've alluded to this. I was really struggling with maths. So I did ordinary level maths in the Leaving Cert because I didn't want to try, but I got an A in it. And I thought it was easy, but then I found calculus and these other things you have to do really difficult, because I'm not a very mathematical person. And I really, really struggled. I was in big trouble. I was failing. I wasn't doing well in assignments. I was struggling in my tutorials. So I needed extra help. So luckily I had Kieran. So I had a Kieran, and he was able to help me because I needed the help, and he was very good at it. And he's a very good person. And he really helped me out. But without that, I would have been in serious trouble, and I probably would have failed first year. So I managed to scrape a pass in maths thanks to Kieran and an awful lot of hard work. But without his help, and here's him when he had a shaved head, I normally put pictures up of people that, and I'm in the picture with them, but the only pictures I could find of me and Kieran, both of us have our tongues stuck out, and I don't know why, 4 separate pictures. So I thought that would be a bit embarrassing. So we went with his staff picture. But here's another key message. You need to work hard. Everybody does. There's no way you're going to get through and achieve anything worthwhile if you don't work hard. But everybody needs help. Everybody, even the geniuses, even the people who are like way, way smarter than all the rest of us. Everyone needs help of some kind, whether it's, you know, financial help from home, or, you know, emotional support, or, you know, somebody who helps you settle down, or somebody who stops you from being homesick, or something like that. Everybody needs help at some point. And it's not an admission of weakness to ask for help. It's not. And this isn't just, you know, like tutoring help like I had from Kieran. You can get all sorts of help, but everybody needs it in some way. And you should always be willing to accept help and to seek help if you really need it. So I would never have graduated without help. I would have failed first year. And if I'd failed again, I don't think I would have finished a degree. I think I would have left. I would have been so demoralized. So when you are struggling, find yourself a Kieran. Not this Kieran, because he's a very busy man and there's a lot of you, but do find yourself someone who can help you. And there's always people who are there who can help. Talk to people. It's really important. So I got through first year and I really hit my groove. I really enjoyed it. We got to do we went past the basic stuff. We got to do really interesting topics, lots of different lectures. Still had to work hard, still a lot of work to do, but we were able to really get going, and we did some really, really like interesting stuff. Our practicals in biology were like mad. We were doing, you know, genetic fingerprinting and all this kind of stuff. Really, really interesting. And second year was great. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I really settled in. I wasn't struggling with exams anymore. I was even passing maths, which was great. So, you know, second year was ace. Then we went through third year, and once I finished third year, there was no more maths. So at this point, I wasn't struggling with maths, but it still was my worst subject. So I was quite happy at that point to leave maths behind, and I was able to focus on biology and computer science, which were my two better subjects. And both of those I use in my job right now. So I still have to do programming, and obviously I do biology. So these are things that I've kept using even 20 years later. But I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So at this point, I was sort of hitting 20-ish. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I had all these people around me who had all these ambitions, and, you know, they were saying they wanted to go on and do medicine, or they wanted to do research, or they, you know, wanted to teach and all these kind of things. But I really didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I was interested in science, but what I wanted to do for a job, I didn't know, because my last job, at that point, I was working in a sports shop in Liffey Valley. So, you know, that was the only work I'd been doing. I hadn't worked as a scientist. So luckily for me, and I know this sounds horrible, but one of my best friends, Nadine, got sick. And this is an example of how a weird and little thing can change your life forever. So this is Nadine. She is one of my best friends, and I'm not trying to glory in the fact that she got sick, but the fact that she got sick changed my life forever. And I literally would not be sitting here. I wouldn't be living in Oxford. I wouldn't be on TV. I wouldn't have a PhD, anything, if Nadine hadn't caught the flu. How weird is that? So luck plays a very, very large part in people's lives. And often you don't realize it until sometimes years afterwards that wasn't that lucky. That little thing, the bus you didn't catch, or the fact it was raining that day, or something. Little things can play a huge part, because it means that your life sort of shifts into a new path. And mine did, because Nadine got the flu. So this set me on a very, very different path, because at that point we were just going into fourth year and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and we had to pick options, and I was going to go and do sort of medical based science because I thought maybe working on cures would have been the kind of thing that would interest me. But instead I ended up going on a field trip to Mayo, which might not sound like a big deal, but it really was. So here's the picture of us. That's me sitting down at the front, because I am absolutely petrified of heights, and there's a really large cliff there, and I refuse to lean against the fence because I'm a big Jessie when it comes to heights. And it might not sound like a big deal, but this little shift made a massive deal, and you'll see in a minute. So it really, really did make a big difference. So I took Nadine's place, so she should have been there, and I ended up going for a week to Mayo before we started fourth year for an ecology field trip. And the man with the beard is Professor Martin Downs, and he's been a huge influence on my life, really massive. And going on that changed my life completely. So all I wanted to do was I wanted to do my fourth year project, which is a large part of the course. You spend several months working on an experimental project in a lab. I wanted to work in Martin's lab because I had such a good time with him. I found him very interesting. He got me really into ecology and things. So I did my fourth year project. So this was really important to me. So I fell in love with ecology and environmental science. I really, really did. It was something that I was drawn to. I've become passionate about it. I'm very, I'm a bit of an eco warrior and all that kind of thing. So I fell in love with this. I was so interested in it. And while I'd always been interested in science, I was fascinated by this. So this is what drives most scientists, is they're fascinated by the question. And I was always fascinated by the questions to do with ecology. And I also fell in love with, kind of in love with Tom and Paul, who are two of me and Kieran's best friends. And they were doing their fourth year projects at the same time as I did. And it ended up leading to me being a summer student too. So it really did change my life. That's Paul at my wedding, and that's Tom at my wedding. So many years later, we're still very, very good friends. They came to my wedding, they're coming over here to visit me in a few weeks. So these people who I picked the fourth year project based on Dean getting sick became some of my closest friends, and it changed my life. Little things. So this was my summer student project. So on the left, you have a picture of an insect, which is a large pine weevil, and it's eating on a new pine tree that has just been planted beside a tree stump. And on the right, you see at the bottom, there's a cut down forest. So that's where I did most of my work. So a lot of people think science, but I was using a chainsaw and a shovel and a chisel. It wasn't very much white coat stuff. It was much more mucky and dirty, but that's ecology. And on the top, there's a little tiny worm that's about 1 millimeter long. and they crawl inside insects and kill them. So what were doing was we were applying these worms to these tree stumps to kill those insects so that when they wouldn't come out and eat the new pine trees that the farmers had planted. So it's called biological control. And it's something I was really interested in because reducing chemical pesticides and things is something I have become very interested in because of my interest in ecology. So this was a great summer project. I absolutely loved it. I had loads of fun, and it showed me a different side of science. It's not the white coat and pipettes and glasses and gloves science. It's, you know, a very different approach. And I loved every second of it. Even when it was spilling rain or hailstones or thunderstorms, I just had such a great time. So at the end, I graduated that summer, and so my nickname is Bones, and that's what everybody calls me. And my PhD interview was that sentence: "Hey Bones, do you want to do a PhD?" Which is very different to a lot of people's, but I was in the lab already, and I said, sure, why not? I was interested in it, and I really, again, I didn't have a plan. So I said, do you know what, this might be fun. So I started getting paid to go to college, which was great. And this is all down to these two wonderful scientists here, Dr. Aoife Dillon and Professor Christine Griffin. So Aoife was my day-to-day supervisor. It was her project that I was working on, and Christine is the head of the lab. And they were wonderful to me, gave me such great opportunities. And PhD life suited me down to the ground. As much fun as I had as an undergrad, doing research as a PhD student was brilliant. I had so much freedom. It was a 3-year deadline, 4-year deadline, so I didn't have exams, any of that kind of stuff. And I absolutely loved it. I was able to try loads of different things that didn't work, and some things did. And I got on with everybody in the lab. We were such good friends. It was such a great experience in every way. So research was clearly my thing. Now, finally, here I am, you know, 21, 22, 23, and I finally know what I want to do with my life. So if you're the kind of person who's going, oh, you know, I don't know what to do with my life when you're 16, it's not uncommon. It took me quite a long time to figure this out. So I spent 4 years doing my PhD, and I had an absolute blast. I loved it. So worked very hard, did loads of experiments. During the summertime when we were doing our field trials, we worked 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 days in a row, working really long hours. But during the wintertime, we had a bit more downtime. And here's something I want to talk about. So I had a question from Curtis about work-life balance and how you switch away from, you know, you're studying for your leaving cert and your head's down, and then you go to college. You have to look up a bit. You can't just do exams. You have to do different things. So all work and no play is a really bad idea. So I did have a life outside the lab. I worked very, very hard. I did long hours. But I also did lots of other stuff. So I moved in with Tom and Paul, my two basically life partners at this point. And we shared a house, and we traveled, we had fun, we went away for weekends, we did, like, you know, went to cities in Europe, went to Eurovision, all sorts. We had great fun. And I set up the surf club with some friends of mine, one of whom, Joan, I'm now married to. So, you know, there is that. So that's when I met the real love of my life, Joan. So we have been married for quite a while. We've been living together for a long time. More about her in a bit. But I never would have met her if Nadine hadn't got the flu. How weird is that? There you go. And so there's a picture of me at my graduation with my little mammy. So I thought, seeing as this is an Irish talk, we have to have my mammy in it. But yeah, well, I had a great time. And it's really, really important that you do this, because if you don't, you lose all perspective, you become less productive, you become miserable, you resent what you do. And once you start resenting what you do, the fun is gone, and that's it. You don't do this kind of work for, you know, you don't get paid massive amounts of money or anything. If you don't love it, it's not going to be for you. So you need to make sure you have a balance in your life. You need to make sure you can break away and find other interests, or it just falls apart. I've seen so many people burn out and end up not finishing PhDs and degrees because of this. So I did get a PhD along the way. So I was doing stuff, but I did a lot of other things too. And I think that's a very important point for you to take on board. If you're going to do this kind of thing, you need to make sure you enjoy all aspects of university life, not just the studying side. So this is key. Too much work is counterproductive. I not that long ago had to tell one of our PhD students that I was taking her access card away from her because she was working 7 days a week. So I made her take Christmas off, because I basically meant that she couldn't get into the building because she was losing all perspective. Your mind needs other things to be creative. If you constantly work, your brain stops being as efficient, and you need to take breaks. You need to have hobbies, and you, most importantly, need to make friends. I am very, very good friends with people like Kieran and Tom and Paul. Years, like 20 years later, we still are very good friends, and we visit each other. I've had friends fly around the world to visit me that I haven't seen in 10 years, but it's like they've never been away. So that's important. Do make sure that when you do go to college, if you do go to college, that you don't just work all the time, because that's a disaster. So I finished my PhD and I could no longer justify staying in university. Unfortunately, I really didn't want to leave, but there was no funding for me to keep going and I had to get a job. Luckily, I have a very good friend, Tom. So Tom at that point had left. He'd done a master's and he was working in a company as a biomedical scientist. So he got me a job, which was great. So me and Tom were still living together and we used to commute together. And we worked in the wonderfully named infectious diseases lab in a company called ICON. So ICON are a massive multinational, but they were started in Ireland. They're based in Leopardstown. And I worked doing different assays to assess patient samples, basically. So people who are on drug trials send samples in to check for side effects and how well the drug is working, all that kind of thing. That's what we did. We tested those and it was a massive company. So it's very, very different world to academia because, you know, it's much more rigid. You're not running your own experiments. You know, you've got protocols to follow, all that kind of thing, but it's got a lot of advantages. So it's a very, very steady job. So I could have stayed there forever. It had decent pay. Now, it wasn't brilliant pay, but the thing is there was promotion prospects. So if you got up into management, you start earning quite a bit of money. So there was career progression, all that kind of thing, which is harder in academia. There was a pension. I know, very boring to someone your age, but when you're my age and you start thinking about retiring, this is important. So there was a good pension and that was really important. And I hated every single second of it. I was absolutely miserable. It had all of these advantages. It was 9 to 5. There was no working late, no working weekends, no out digging things, all that kind of stuff. But I hated every second of it. It was so restrictive. It was non-creative in every imaginable way. We had to follow very tight procedures because it's medical stuff. You know, you can't just make things up as you go along. And that's what I liked about science. I liked the asking questions thing, but this was answering questions. It wasn't asking questions. And I really didn't like it. I was completely miserable. So I left. At this point, myself and Joan, my current wife, had been working away as a couple for about 5 or 6 months. And she told me, you know what, I'm after getting offered a job in Canada in Montreal. And she was worried that I wouldn't go with her, but I dropped everything. I couldn't wait to get out of that job. So this was a brilliant excuse. So we moved to Canada. Off we went and we flew out on New Year's Day, which was a terrible idea, but I needed to for my visa. I had to go that calendar year. And we landed, or New Year's Eve, I landed New Year's Day. Everything was closed. It was freezing. And I thought, have I made a horrible mistake here? It's so cold. When we landed, it was minus 26. I didn't have a winter coat or winter boots. And I got there ahead of Joan. She was on a flight the next day. And I was wandering around this town, which was closed down for the holidays. And I thought, oh God, I've made a horrible mistake. Joan arrived and all was well. So she had a really cool job. So she was working in McGill, which is kind of like it's the #1 university in Canada. It's basically Canada's Harvard. And she was working in this really prestigious lab, working on liver disease, doing some really mad, like high-end medical experiments. I didn't, in a word. So this is the bit where I sort of tell people that I didn't sail through. I couldn't get a job. I think I applied to like 20 or 30 places. I didn't even get an interview. I rarely got an email back. I went to a jobs fair, which was like just for regular jobs, not science jobs, and was told that because I didn't speak French and Montreal's bilingual, I couldn't get a job anywhere. So I needed to learn French. And I'm like, oh God, I need to be fluent in French here. And I did German in school, so I had no French at all. So I was really struggling. And I couldn't get an interview. That's the thing. I tried my best. I was wandering around and Joan was working all day. You know, she was working really hard. So I was sitting in our apartment on my own. I had no friends. We didn't really have very much money because only one of us was working and we just moved countries. So we'd spent all our money on that. So I was really struggling. I was going mad basically. But luckily, I love this photograph of Emma, by the way. This is my boss in Canada with the very hungry caterpillar. I don't know how she agreed to it, but this is one of her staff photos. So I got a postdoc's job. So this is when you're finished your doctoral stuff, if you work, it's a postdoctoral. And this is Dr. Emma Deplant, who rescued me. So she works in insects and forestry as well. So it was very closely related to what I've been doing, but she was more interested in behavior than control. So it was slightly different. And she didn't have very much money. So she couldn't actually afford to pay me full time. So I had to write grants for myself, which was fine, but it's very difficult to get money. And I spent a lot of time writing grants. So it was much harder for me than previously because I had to spend so much time trying to fund myself, and I had to keep popping back to Ireland and back again to get visas and all sorts. So it was a really unsettled period for me, but we made it work because, you know, I needed the job, and I really like working for Emma. She's a lovely person. So what we were working on, this is kind of cool. So I thought I'd talk to you a bit about this. The caterpillar on the left that looks like it's got a row of penguins on its back, it's called a forest tent caterpillar. And it grows in maple syrup plantations. It eats the leaves. That's what it does. And it's there all the time, really low levels, and it doesn't do very much damage. But every so often, it has a massive outbreak. And we don't really know why, just their population explodes. And it's so many of them during an outbreak that you can hear them eating when you walk into the forest. So you can hear this of millions of these things eating all the leaves. And you can hear their poo hitting the ground like rain because they're just feeding machines, basically. So completely insane outbreaks every so often in maple syrup plantations. So we were working on that. And what we were trying to do was to figure out what sort of ballpark idea that we could get that causes these outbreaks. We never did figure it out in the end. We had a few ideas, but didn't have enough money to look into it. So again, outside of work, and this will become relevant, it turns out that in Canada, I'm actually okay at football. I'm terrible in Ireland, absolutely terrible. Like I'd never even joined the Gaelic club in Ireland because I was so bad, but I was one of the star players over there, and I played soccer, which I'm really mediocre at. But I made loads of good friends doing this, and I'm still very good friends with these guys, especially these two guys at the top. It's me at my stag party. We still keep in good contact with each other. And I completely destroyed my right knee playing on a bad pitch in Canada. It was a hole in the ground that I stood in, which will become relevant later. But we had enough. I couldn't get a good job, and Joan got offered again. She's now my fiance, got a really cool job because she's a much better scientist than me. So she got offered a really cool job in the chemistry department, and we got married, and we moved to England, which was great, except I didn't get a job again. So I really, really, really struggled. Everybody has low points in their life. Everybody does. No one, anyone who tells you different is a liar, to be honest. Everybody has these low points. And this was definitely mine. This is the worst I've ever been. I've always been able to be positive before, even in Canada and things when things weren't going well. But I applied for 104 jobs because I kept a spreadsheet. I had nothing else to do, and I got none of them. I didn't get an interview, and I was really, really down. I'd even applied for jobs. I applied for a job at Marks and Spencer stacking shelves for Christmas, and they turned me down because I was overqualified. And it was really tight for money. We were living in a single room in like a hostel type place that didn't have TV, didn't have internet good enough to stream movies or anything. So I spent my days just walking around the city, bored out of my mind. And I was at a very, very low point in my life. But then I was rescued by my boss, my current boss. This is Alan. I work with him, and he works in a fly lab in Oxford. And I eventually got an interview as a research technician, which I was overqualified for, but I didn't care. I needed the job and I really wanted to. But this was a very different type of lab. So previously my labs were always very low budget. Alan is a many million pounds kind of grant person. So it was much more high end, much more technical, much more white coaty kind of science, but biochemistry, that kind of thing. And we were working on fly brains, wanted to understand how they work, because it's a good model for how human brains work, but it's still insects. And that's how I got the job. So when I started, I was looking after the flies. I wasn't really doing experiments, but over the last 9 years, I've just been promoted all of the time because I kept working away and learning new things. And now I run the lab for Alan, so I'm his lab manager. So even though I started off at being a bit overqualified, I'm now at the job that I always wanted to do. And I love it. I've been working for him for 9 years. So a bit about my current project. So it's very advanced microscopy, and we're looking for RNA and protein. So we need to have very advanced microscopy because we're looking for things that are about 10,000 times thinner than a human hair, and we're looking for single molecules. So really, really technically very challenging. We're screening hundreds of genes, and we've been working on this now for 6.5 years of the time I've been there, and it's just about to be published. We submitted preprint, and it's going to the journal this week. And this is what the data looks like. They're rather unfortunately shaped fly brains, but all of those different colors are proteins and RNAs that we're able to track through hundreds of different genes to try and understand which genes are involved in building brains and controlling stem cells and making memories. So it's a really cool, massive project that I've been looking after for the last 6 years. Very generously funded by Wellcome, by the way. So they're a charity that fund our lab. So I'm going to get on to some quizzing now, and I know this seems unrelated, but back to GAA. So it turns out when I moved to England, I was not as good at GAA compared to the others as I was in Canada, where the level was really low. My knees were really bad at this point, and I'd done so much damage to them. And this, with the higher standard and the fact that I was getting old, I'm well into my 30s at this point, I did what most people do. I joined a committee and I stopped playing. So I know that sounds like it doesn't actually mean anything. And why am I bothering to tell you this? Well, the GAA committee had a quiz team. Now, I didn't know this at the time. And at this point, so this is about 6 years ago-ish, 7 years ago maybe, I had no real interest in quiz. I did a pub quiz if there was one on, and I was really good at them, but I never did it as a regular thing. But the team was short a player one day, and I lived literally around the corner from the pub that they were playing in. So it's a league that they play in. So I joined in. I just on a whim. I wasn't going to. I was like, oh, I'm tired. I've been working all day. And my wife kind of gave me a nudge. Said, look, go on. You like quizzes. You might make some friends. That decision to go out that day, again, another one that changed my life. I wouldn't have joined that quiz league, and I wouldn't have ended up on the chase if I hadn't been nudged out the door by my wife. So you never know where little decisions are going to lead. So it's not always the big momentous decisions. It's not always the CAO application or the which degree am I going to do or that kind of thing. Sometimes it's the little things. And the key is to be able to take advantage of those situations you find yourself in. So the chase is on. This was me. It was a game changer. So the reason why I ended up on the chase is because TV shows look for contestants in quiz leagues because they want people who are good, who will win some money. So I applied. I was on 2 different shows. So I did really badly on one called Rebound, which luckily I don't think aired in Ireland and only ran for 1 season. I think only about a few thousand people have seen it, thankfully. And then I turned down Pointless because Joan was heavily pregnant at the time and I didn't want to leave her on her own. And I turned down Tipping Point because they wanted me to be a standby, which, as it turns out, were also good decisions because that meant I could do the chase and I won some money. Not very much money, but I won some money. I won 1,600 quid. We were a bit broke at the time and I paid for a new back door in my house. Exactly what I wanted. And I thought that would be the end of it. But very soon afterwards, this happened. So when it aired, it went nuts. It went absolutely nuts. And this was my first taste of fame and it was horrible, to be honest. It was trending, the highest trending thing on Twitter in the UK. People got really mad about my teammates because they all took lower offers. I got tons of attention, people following me, tagging me. Someone set up a GoFundMe to win me back the money. It was all ridiculous. Journalists were calling me and contacting me and emailing me and things. It was mad, but I couldn't say anything because little did they know I'd already started interviewing at that point for the job. So when they phoned me up, it was just after I recorded the show and I thought it was a joke and I was about to hang up. Again, good decision that I didn't. I thought my friends had put someone up to it, but it was a 2-year process and I had to do lots more hard work. And this is unfortunate, but this is the nature of it. I had to study really hard and this was basically back to being a student again. And I used exactly the same skills that I learned as a student in Maynooth. And I still have my notes that I took for studying for quiz. And if you compare them to my notes for my finals in 4th year, they're almost exactly the same format, the same layout, the same methods of memorizing, all of that. It all came from all my time in Maynooth. So the skills are transferable to different things. And it was kind of weird going back to it because I hadn't studied in so long, but yeah, it was almost exactly the same. And it's still going. I still study all of the time. I have flashcards on my phone, all that kind of thing. So yeah, it's always in process. So that's me warbling on for a very long time. So I'm just going to summarize and then we can go for some questions. So there's nothing wrong with having a plan and there's nothing wrong with not having a plan. Both of them are fine, but really at this point, a little bit of a plan can really help because it can kind of focus your mind. So if you're unsure what you want to do, that's fine. Don't stress about it. Something will come up and you just need to figure out what you're interested in. And that bit of a plan can help you go in that direction. And the only bit of a plan I had was that I liked science. And that's how it's worked out for me. Always remember that little things can have big consequences, but unfortunately, you probably won't realize till years afterwards. So not everything is under your control. You can't plan everything. Even if you're the most meticulous person, you have to be able to roll with things changing and little things can really change things a lot. There's always low points. Always. Everyone assumes from the outside that I've sailed through life and I really haven't. I haven't had it really hard. Like I grew up middle class and, we were never short of food or anything like that. I never had those horrible low points, but I had personal career low points that were almost crushing. I almost gave up, and that happens to everybody. So you have to be prepared for that. And this is the big one. Luck plays a huge part in everyone's life, whether it's where you go to school, who your friends are, you know, who you meet on a particular day, anything like that. Luck is a huge part to play. There's nothing you can do about that. You just have to roll with it. And unfortunately, you really can't get anywhere meaningful without working hard. I know there's luck and all of these things I've said, but you can push a lot of that back by working hard. So you do have to work hard occasionally, but not all the time. Okay, so that's me done. I hope that wasn't too dull. If anybody's any questions, I'm really happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Darragh. And like, I'm just in awe, because you were like, I just wrote a couple of notes: refreshing, inspirational, truthful, honest, and raw. And I think our audience is very fortunate, and I'm very fortunate that Kieran put me in touch with you, because I remember saying to you that, you know, some people would assume, oh, look at Darragh on telly, doesn't he have his life made? He probably got 650 points in his leaving. He probably knew someone in the chase and he got in through the back door. Whereas you told us a really, really honest story there. Kieran, before I go to questions, and I know you're heading, poor Kieran's heading to lecture at 11. Do you want to jump in with a couple of words and then I'll come to the questions?
Sure, yeah. It's not poor me going to the lecture. I think it's my poor students doing cryptography, which is really interesting. Now, I just wanted to pick up on one thing that Bones, I'm going to have to call you Bones. This Darragh nonsense just doesn't work. But I'm wordy as well, so that makes everything easier. Just one point about, thanks Darragh for the lovely photograph. I'd forgotten that I was a skinhead for about 10 years. In terms of finding when you asking for help, I think that's the only thing I want to point on. I could not agree with you more about any point. Asking for help is key. And while you probably can't have a little me around to help you with maths, if you're going to university, there are free helps available in all universities. So, for example, if we pick Maynooth as one example, there is a math support centre which offers free help 25 hours a week. There is a computer science centre which helps with programming for so many hours a week. There is a drop-in chemistry lab. So there are free supports in most universities. So if you go to university and you run into trouble, which you inevitably will, everybody does, exactly what Darragh said, ask for help. Okay, I need to go on.
Thanks, Kieran. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Yeah, take care. Take care. See you.
Thank you, Kieran. And just following on from that, Darragh, I don't know if brave is the right word, but there was 3 take-home points that really, or not even take-home points, but 3 points that you made, and it showed a bit of bravery in a 17-year-old. First of all, you'd moved from Dublin to Sligo, and while Sligo was an amazing place, you left it, you took the decision to leave it because it wasn't for you. And a lot of people, when they finish the Leaving Cert and move away from home or start a college or a course that they're not happy with, they may continue on for a year or 2 years and struggle on and don't have that bravery to say, and it's not dropping out. You assessed, you reassessed, you took some time out and you changed your mind and you went somewhere else. So that was number 1. Then when you came to—
Sorry, Ida, just on that, I meant to say, because I meant to say this while I was talking about, I carried away with myself. My wife, Joan, this brilliant scientist who led me around the world, did a year of music before she realized it wasn't for her. So she also changed course. She moved into biotechnology. Even though she'd wanted to do music since she was like 13 or 14, she realized, actually, do you know what? I don't want to do this. And she changed completely. So she moved subject as well.
That's brilliant, Darragh. And just to let students and guidance counsellors and teachers know out there, like the admissions office, say in Maynooth University, I'm just speaking on Maynooth because that's where I work, but they're so helpful staff. Never struggle when you start university. If you have any doubts, make sure and go to the helpful staff in the admissions office. But the next point that stood out to me too, a lot of students would say, go to university and then struggle with maths. Don't ask for help. Don't ask for help coming up to their exam. Fail the maths and they might disappear and no one knows what has ever happened to them. So you made the bold or brave or kind of mature decision to go, okay, here, I'm struggling with maths. I need to go and find myself a Kieran. So it's what prompted you to look for the math support centre or just stick your hand and say
it didn't exist as a centre in those days, because this was quite a while ago. So I had been struggling for quite a bit, and one of my friends, the guy from Rathcoole who I went with, literally got 100% in maths in first year, but he was hopeless at teaching people, absolutely hopeless. So I was embarrassed to ask him as well, you know. So he had a certain assumption of knowledge, and he go, you know how this is this, and I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And he struggled to get down to my level, even though we were close friends. So I realized I needed help, and I knew Kieran from playing football vaguely. So he was a friend of a friend, and I was chatting to him, and he said, look, if you're really stuck, just call over to me tomorrow morning, and we can get started. And it wasn't that much help. It was a nudge. He put in a few hours with me, and it was just enough to get me rolling. And once I got rolling, I was okay. But that was the thing. I dug myself into a hole, and I couldn't get out of it. And I was too embarrassed to ask people. But luckily, I got over that embarrassment, and I went, look, I need help, or else I'm going to fail here. So it was to get out of the hole that I needed to do it. And it took a bit of bravery to take that step to admit to someone, because I'd never failed at anything in my life at that point. You know, I'd never failed an exam, never. And I was like, oh, I am going to fail this. This is weird. I need to do something. So yeah, it gave me a bit of a push.
Yeah, fair play. And I hope anyone that's listening out there is, when you do start university and if you're struggling with anything, no matter what it is, computer science or whatever, make sure like their staff is really, really helpful. Their support's there. The other brave thing was you didn't like being a lab scientist. And there's lots of people out there love their job as a lab scientist, but you took that brave decision to say, do you know what, this is a great pensionable, good paying job, but it's not for me. So, you know, you took the bold step to move away from that too. Was that a big risk for you, or any advice there? Because you do take advantage of the little things, take all the advantages of the little things, and they'll have big consequences. And, so there was a lot of encouraging words there that you used.
Yeah, I was fairly hopeful I'd be able to get a similar job in Canada, to be honest. And I thought, if it doesn't work out, I can always go back to this kind of career. But I really didn't want to. That was always my plan B. But yeah, a large part of my motivation was personal. So I didn't want to lose my girlfriend, because I was absolutely head over heels in love with her, and she was going. So I would have gone anyway. Even if I'd been in the best job in the world, I would have left. But the fact that I was in this job that I wasn't enjoying and I didn't like, it actually wasn't much for wrench to go. I was like, I didn't care about the financial stability. I just wanted to go where she was.
Yeah, one of the things she said, and that stuck home, I suppose, from a STEM background myself, what I really enjoyed you seeing was the skills that you learned in Maynooth at your undergraduate or postgraduate studies in science. You said skills from Maynooth University you still use today. Another topic that you covered, which when I look back at my university days, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I took full advantages. But you mentioned Nadine, you mentioned Kieran, you mentioned Tom and Paul. You made really lifetime. So forget about the academia and looking for the maths help in that, which is great and helped your career. But you spoke passionately about your student time and your friends that are still hugely important, and your wife too. So your advice to anyone who's looking at their CEO this year, next year, and that world of opportunity out there, the courses obviously are important, but that time about making those lifetime friends.
Oh, absolutely. And, if you have another interest, if you're into a sport or a game, or, you're into politics, or you like Kieran, you like languages, there's all these societies that you can join. You should join them. You will literally make friends for life. And it means that you'll meet people outside of your course. We set up the surf club, and I'm still really good friends with people from that for years and years later, who I had no other interaction with, people who are younger than me. It's not just, university isn't school. It's not that thing. It's a bigger thing than that. There's a whole social aspect to it that's much, much bigger. And if you don't take part in that, honestly, you're missing out on at least half of the experience, at least half.
Yeah, I think the clubs important are hugely, or clubs and societies are hugely important, because you get to mix, because you were in science, but if you joined the surfing or whatever, I'm sure you met students from business studies, from Irish, they just had the same interests as you, and it's expanding your network of friends. So it's great. And I laughed to myself when you put up the picture of the GEA. You can tell from this accent I'm from Monaghan, but moved to Meath, and the first thing that I did was join the GEA committee, and you get to know so many people. So it's expanding your friendship and network there, and that's really important from the university days. I'm going to come to Gráinne, who put up a message. Darragh, so delighted with your talk and how it is giving a realistic idea of how you progress through life. Focusing on what you like is so important, and also that the path isn't always right. This talk should be on the Leaving Cert curriculum. Thank you very much for your thoughts and your time. Someone who said, who's coming in anonymous, the next question is, how much do you get paid? Well, for this hour, it's goodwill, isn't it, Darragh? You're not getting paid for this hour.
Well, I'm happy to answer that about my science job. I'm not allowed to answer it about the TV, I'm afraid. So the science jobs are public, the pay scale. So a postdoc gets paid on grade 7 in the Oxford pay scale. So you can look them up. I think it starts somewhere around £30,000, so around €35,000, and then it goes up depending on service and how long you're there. So all of those scales are public knowledge, so you can just look them up. So if you look up pay grade 7 in Oxford, it'll tell you.
Therese, very informative. Darragh, thank you for your honesty. Our guidance department in Public School Nasan said it's so common for our students to not know what they want. So it's great to hear you also weren't certain at their age stage. So proud of you, says Therese. Therese also says, shout out to Kieran, who won't remember me, but I remember him. Asking for help is so important. Sorry, do you want to reply to Therese?
Yeah, so Therese is a friend of mine, and we have the same birthday. And I first met Therese when I was friends with her housemate, and I appeared, I think it might have been Rag Week, with one of my friends from home in her house and disrupted everything. And that would have been in 1999 or 2000. So I know Therese for about 20 years. Yeah, she's great.
We have a message here. Absolutely agreed. Incredible talk. So real, so needed for students. Thank you so much for Ita and Darragh. Well, actually, it was Darragh and Kieran, and thank you, Kieran, for organising this. Really good question here. Who is your greatest role model?
My greatest role model is my mother. I know this is a very Irish thing to say, but it's my mother. My mother graduated from Maynooth. She went back to school when she had 5 kids, did a degree, became a teacher, and is absolutely the most inspirational person in my life, hands down. I know that's a very Irish boy thing to say, but definitely my mother.
Brilliant. We have a question here from M. Murphy, or maybe it's more. I really enjoyed this talk. So honest and a more realistic portrayal of how life can through the control you knocks and curveballs. Teacher here with no students at present, but I'm going to advise them strongly to watch the recording. Brilliant advice for struggling students heading off to college. I also went to Maynooth in the early 90s and was homesick until I found the roost. Professor Downs taught me very well. Thanks so much, Darragh. And we have a current undergraduate student, Darragh, and this will resonate with a lot of us who have been working from home or studying from home, and students who have been studying during COVID. Did you struggle to make friends in first year? I'm very social and extroverted, but I can't tell if I'm too invested in college work or if COVID has been making it harder. That's a really good point.
Yeah, that is a really good point, and it's very difficult to assess what it's like with COVID. I would have hated doing an undergrad when it's around, because it would have crimped so much the social thing. I would think COVID is probably the bigger problem here. I didn't find it very difficult because I, like this person, I'm very extroverted and I tend to, but I also had a friend. So my mate Alan, who I drove to, who was in my course, I was in his year in school. We were friends for years. I knew him since we were small children. So we had a sort of nucleus and we grew from that. But I think very few people in normal times really, really struggle to find somebody to interact with, because there's so many social options. But I would imagine it's very difficult if you don't. And I don't think I would have been very able for a university experience if I was on my own, to be honest. So I sympathize a lot with that person. Hopefully you'll be able to start meeting people soon and doing more things. And I think because everybody's going to suddenly be allowed, it'll be hopefully a bit of an avalanche of people making friends.
Yeah, and I think what keeps coming back to me, and Darragh, and I'm going to take this into my own life. It's the little things and taking advantages of them, and they can lead to big consequences. Like you mentioned, different stages throughout your presentation about taking that opportunity, not being afraid to take the opportunity, and look where it has led to you today. And Bernadine with the flu has a lot to answer for.
No, right? It's so mad, and I can't. Oh, my boss is calling me. I told him I was on until 11. It's 1 minute too. I can't emphasize enough how I would not have done anything like what I've done. I would not have done a PhD in Maynooth. I wouldn't have met my wife. It wouldn't have happened, except Nadine got the flu. It's you can't predict these things, but they make such a big difference.
A question here from Joey, just wondering how can we watch this recording of this? Joey, when I get it up on our YouTube, or my capable and good friend Darragh in the admissions office gets this up on our YouTube channel, I will send everyone a link to it. And I can't remember because I'm on such a high because this has been so good, but Darragh, did I ask you, this is a question from Neve, who your greatest role model was?
Yes, my mammy.
Oh, yes, you did. I did. Sorry,
A tragic answer.
I'm on a high. I feel so empowered and inspired from this talk. I think this is the end of our questions, Darragh. Just to let everyone know, everyone has my email address. If you need any more information, please don't hesitate to drop me an email. Just wanted to thank Kieran, who has left, for helping organise this. But Darragh, like, this has been truly wonderful. We've had so much feedback. Again, it was so honest, it was so raw, it was so inspirational, and I thank you so much for your time.
No problem at all, Ethan. No problem at all.
And Grania just came back and said, Maynooth is the best. So much help available for students. Please ask. Thank you so much, Darragh. And if anyone has any questions for Darragh, if it's okay with you, I'll forward any relevant to you. But
yeah, absolutely.
Your time, because you have been so generous with your time, and as I say, just so thanks a million, Darragh.
Yeah, no problem at all. And if people send questions to Ida, I'll definitely answer. I promise I will. This is important to me, I think. And it's literally part of my job. I think outreach and talking to people about experiences makes the world a better place. So I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Darragh. Enjoy the rest of your time in London.
Thanks.
And it's a lovely day here in County Meath in Ireland.
Oh, it is. It's like 20 degrees outside. I'm going to have an ice cream after lunch, I think.
Put on the barbecue, Darragh. Put on the barbecue.
Thanks, everyone. And yeah, it was great talking to you all.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Darragh. Bye-bye.
Bye.